There's a phrase you hear constantly in the GLP-1 spaces online. The number on the scale doesn't matter. What matters is my health. And honestly, I get that. Diet culture has spent decades making people feel shame over a number. The obsession with the scale has caused real harm. So pushing back on that makes total and complete sense. But I want to have an honest conversation today, not a judgmental one, about whether that framing is actually serving people who are on these medications. Because here's what the research actually shows: the scale does matter, just probably not in the way that you think it does. Hello, I'm Charles, or RMZ. Welcome to my channel. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps the algorithm. And if you're watching on the mobile app, please hit that hype button, which should appear right after you hit the like button. All right, let's get into this. Let's start with where the mindset comes from, because context matters. For decades, the dominant framework around weight was less is more. The scale was the scorecard, and that framework caused serious harm: eating disorders, yo yo dieting, people pursuing weight loss through methods that actually damaged their metabolic health. So, when GLP-1 medications came along and people started experiencing genuine health improvements, better blood sugar, lower blood pressure, reduced joint pains, and they found a community that said, we're not here to be smaller, we're here to be healthier, that resonated deeply with a lot of folks. And to be clear, that community is right. That obsession with the number is misplaced. The scale as a moral scorecard, that's harmful, and we should push back on it. But, and this is a real but, health, not weight, can also become a way to avoid asking harder questions like, am I using this medication as a crutch or a tool? Before we get into the data, I want to say something clearly. There is genuine, growing evidence that GLP-1s improve health in ways that go beyond just losing pounds. This isn't a marketing spin, it's real science, and it deserves to be acknowledged honestly. So let's run through what the research actually shows, organ by organ. First up, the SELECT trial enrolled over 17,600 adults with obesity and pre-existing cardiovascular disease. None of them had diabetes, and tracked them for about 40 months. The headline from that: semaglutide reduced major cardiovascular events, heart attack, stroke, cardiovascular death, reduced by 20%. That's an absolute risk reduction from 8% down to 6.5%. That's groundbreaking. The first time any weight management therapy had done this in a rigorous, randomized trial in people without diabetes. But here's what's been revealed in the follow-up analysis, and this is where it's genuinely interesting. A pre-specified analysis published in The Lancet in late 2025 found that early body weight reduction alone did not predict subsequent cardiovascular outcomes. Mediation analysis suggested that weight circumference reduction accounted for only about 33% of semaglutide's cardioprotective effect. A broader meta-analysis found that 35 to 55% of the cardiovascular benefits appear independent of weight reduction, with the drug reducing a key inflammatory marker, high sensitivity C reactive protein, by nearly 39%. So the heart protection isn't purely about weight. Direct anti-inflammatory effects, improvements in endothelial function, and other vascular mechanisms appear to be doing real work here. The liver story is equally striking. Research published in Cell Metabolism by Dr. Daniel Drucker's team at Sinai Health found that semaglutide acts directly on a specialized population of liver cells, liver sinusoidal endothelial cells, to reduce inflammation and scarring independently of weight loss. Drucker noted that in clinical trials, patients who lose very little weight show the same reductions in liver inflammation, scarring, and enzyme levels as those who lose a great deal. So that overturns a long-held assumption about how the drug works in the liver. The FDA approved semaglutide for MASH, metabolic liver disease, in 2025, partly on the strength of this evidence. Then there's the FLOW trial, the first dedicated kidney outcomes trial for a GLP-1. It was stopped early because the results were so clear. Semaglutide reduced the composite primary endpoint of kidney disease progression and death by 24% compared to placebo in people with type 2 diabetes and chronic kidney disease. GLP-1 receptors appear to act directly on kidney tubule cells, contributing to protection that goes beyond what weight loss alone could explain. So the community isn't wrong. These drugs do more than cause weight loss. The direct biological effects, anti inflammatory pathways, organ level signaling, endothelial functions are real. They're meaningful, and the science is catching up to explain why. And this is a meaningful but. The honest read of the evidence is that these direct effects appear to be a floor of protection, a baseline benefit the drug delivers regardless of how much weight you lose. The ceiling for bigger gains still appear to come from meaningful fat loss. Most metabolic health improvements like insulin sensitivity, blood pressure normalization, fatty liver reversal, sleep apnea resolution, scale with how much fat mass you actually shed. Even the cardiovascular data supports this. The select analysis found that while body weight alone wasn't the mediator, waist circumference reduction, the best proxy for visceral fat loss, was linearly associated with lower cardiovascular risk. The drug preferentially drives visceral fat loss, so fat loss still matters enormously. It's just that the drug is doing additional work on top of that. So the honest framing, GLP-1s appear to have a two-tier benefit structure. There's a floor of protection from the drug's direct biological effects, and there's a larger additional tier of benefits that come from meaningful fat loss, especially visceral fat loss. The health not weight community is sometimes pointing at the floor and saying the scale doesn't matter, but in doing so, they may be leaving the bigger tier of potential on the table. The Step 1 trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, showed average weight reduction at about 15% over 68 weeks with semaglutide 2.4 milligrams. Paired with that, waist circumferences fell about 13.5 centimeters versus 4.1 for placebo. Blood pressure is improved, triglycerides dropped, and the magnitude of those improvements tracked with the degree of fat loss. They weren't uniform across people, regardless of what the scale showed. So, the framing I'd land on, weight loss is necessary, but it's not sufficient on its own. And the drug is helping in more ways than we originally understood. Both things are true. And here's the piece that the health not weight conversation almost completely skips over. Not all weight loss is the same. Imagine two people both lose 30 pounds on a GLP-1. Person A loses 25 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of muscle, while person B loses 20 pounds of fat and 10 pounds of muscle. Same number on the scale. Radically different health outcomes because muscle isn't just aesthetic. Skeletal muscle is metabolically active tissue. It's a major site of glucose uptake. It's protective against insulin resistance. Losing significant lean mass while on a GLP-1, which can absolutely happen, can create a situation where your weight looks better, but your metabolic health is actually more fragile. And here's where the data gets a little uncomfortable. The Step 1 and Sustain 8 trials found that somewhere between 39 and 40% of the weight loss on semaglutide was lean mass. And that's not a fringe finding. A 2021 meta analysis of 18 randomized controlled trials confirmed significant drops in fat free mass across GLP 1 drugs. A more recent 2024 systematic review and network meta analysis found GLP 1 receptor agonists reduced lean mass by roughly 25% relative to total weight loss. And notably, semaglutide 2.4 milligrams and tirzepatide 15 milligrams, the most effective weight loss doses, were the least effective at preserving lean mass. Regeneron's Courage trial, with the interim results published in 2024, confirmed that approximately 35% of semaglutide-induced weight loss was lean mass. They were testing whether combining semaglutide with muscle-preserving antibodies could change that ratio. And it did, reducing lean mass loss by 50 to 80%. And it's not just how much fat you lose, but where it comes from. Visceral fat, the fat around your organs, inside your abdominal cavity, is the metabolically dangerous stuff. It drives inflammation, insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, cardiovascular risk. Subcutaneous fat, the fat under your skin, is far less dangerous. The good news here is real. GLP-1s appear to be quite effective at reducing visceral fat. A meta-analysis in PLOS ONE found GLP-1 receptor agonists significantly reduced visceral adipose tissue and liver fat content across adults with and without diabetes. Waist circumference, the best clinical proxy for visceral fat, fell an average of 9 to 10 centimeters with semaglutide, and that's meaningful. But here's the key point: that visceral fat reduction requires actual fat loss. You can't get it from the drug alone if you're not losing fat mass. So, what does this mean practically? The scale number isn't the villain, but it's also not the hero. What you really want to know is: one, am I losing fat mass or just weight? Ideally, you're tracking more than just pounds. Body composition scans, like DEXA scans, if you can access them, or just tracking your waist circumference, tell you a lot more than the scale alone. A tape measure around your waist measured consistently is a legitimate proxy for visceral fat changes. Now, moving on to number two, am I protecting my lean mass? This is where protein intake and resistance training become non negotiable. GLP 1 suppress appetite significantly, which is great for reducing calories, but dangerous if those calories come at the cost of protein. Research consistently shows that adequate protein intake, which is roughly 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, though recommendations will vary and you may need to up that if you're doing resistance training. Protein and resistance training are the primary tools for preserving muscle during weight loss. Not doing these things while on a GLP 1 is a missed opportunity at best and a metabolic risk at worst. And three, are my actual biomarkers improving? Blood pressure, fasting glucose, A1C, triglycerides, liver enzymes. These are the health outcomes that matter. If the scale is moving, but your biomarkers aren't improving or they are getting worse, that's information worth paying attention to. So let me offer a reframe that I think honors both sides of this conversation. The health, not weight community is right that the scale as a moral scorecard is harmful. Nobody should feel shame over a number, and the evidence that GLP 1s improve health through direct biological effects, reducing inflammation, protecting the liver, slowing kidney disease progression, is genuinely exciting and is real. The drug is doing more than we originally understood. But the number doesn't matter, can still become a shield against accountability. Because while the drug delivers a floor protection on its own, the biggest gains in insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, cardiovascular risk, fatty liver reversal still appear to require meaningful fat loss, particularly of visceral fat. The more precise framing is this: the number on the scale is necessary, but it's not sufficient. What matters is what you're losing, where you're losing it from, and whether your body composition is moving in a direction that supports long term metabolic health. The top number on the scale doesn't tell you all of that, but it's not irrelevant either. This isn't a judgment on anyone's journey. These medications are genuinely life changing for a lot of people, but the conversation around them deserves more nuance than ignore the scale, because the most powerful thing you can do on a GLP 1 is make sure the weight you're losing is the right weight. Now, if you found this useful, I'd love to hear what you think about it down in the comments, especially if you're on a GLP 1 yourself. What does your approach to tracking look like? Are you looking at anything beyond the scale? Links to all the trials I mentioned, Select, Step 1, Sustain 8, Flow, and the body composition meta-analysis are in the description below. So with that said, I'll see you next time. I hope you have a good one.